For those who are just joining us, you're absolutely in the right place for the special Free to Focus bonus. Michael is going to be helping all of us conquer our unruly email inboxes, and we'll be starting in just a moment. First, we'd love to hear from you guys. If you want to go ahead and jump into that chat window, let us know where you're coming from. Michael, it looks like we've got folks from all over here in our first 50.
I can see right here in the chat myself. This will be a small, intimate group. This is going to be kind of fun.
It definitely will. I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a great session today. Now, Michael, I know you're really, really passionate about helping people to escape email. It can be such a time drain for so many of us, can it?
It totally can. Yeah, I remember one of the first seminars I ever taught, like a company-wide thing, was when I was at Thomas Nelson. I was, mid-level manager and kind of an email ninja at that time. And so my boss asked me if I would do kind of one of those lunch and learn things where anybody from the company could come. And so I did a whole email session. And I mean, it's amazing that we don't get that kind of training typically in the corporate world or even in small business. It's not something you learn in college. Why not? I mean, it's something we spend so much time doing typically, and yet there's no training or very little training on it.
That's so true. It's bizarre that it's something that we're not taught, but I know you have some really fantastic strategies that you're going to share with us today that are going to be so helpful. So I can't wait to dig in. Are you excited?
I'm excited. I'm ready to go.
Awesome. Well, Michael, it looks like we are right here at our start time for the session, and I think that we're ready to go ahead and officially kick this thing off if you're ready.
Great. I'm ready.
All right, fantastic. Well, all of you, I want to welcome you to this special training, Taming Your Inbox. Michael is going to be sharing 5 steps that are going to help you to achieve productive email management. It is going to be a fantastic time today, so I want to welcome you. I also want to congratulate you on being one of the first 50 folks to enroll in Free to Focus. We are so excited, and we know that that is going to be a life-changing course for you, just like it has been for hundreds of other people. And so congratulations, and thank you for joining us. We're so grateful. We also want to thank you for joining us for this small group live training about email management. It is going to be a fantastic time today. Now, to begin, I'd love to cover just a few housekeeping items with you. First of all, we would love it if all of you would go ahead and mute your microphones so that we can focus in on what Michael is sharing. All you've got to do is click the mute button that you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner of your Zoom window. I also want to encourage all of you, if you haven't already, to keep your webcams turned off. Again, all you've got to do in the bottom left-hand of your Zoom window is hit stop video, and that way we can all focus in on what Michael is sharing with us today. Michael is going to be teaching for maybe 20 minutes or so about some of his best systems that are really going to empower you to tame your inbox, and it's going to be fantastic content. Then at the end, we'll be regrouping and having some Q&A time where I'll be asking Michael all of your questions about email management. So as you think of questions throughout this session, I want to encourage you to jump into that chat window that you'll see at the bottom panel and share any questions that you have for Michael about how to manage your email inbox. And again, Michael is going to be answering those live at the end of the session. All right, Michael, I think that's about all of the prep work. Are you ready to dive in and get started?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Fantastic. Well, Michael, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my webcam here so that we can focus in on what you have to share. And I will see you for the Q&A at the end.
Terrific. I'm going to leave my webcam on here for just a second. So I'm thinking of this kind of as a small group session, which it is. I think what we've got now, about 24 participants. And I'm sure others will watch this as a recording, but I've just invited you into my office. Welcome. This is where I get my work done. This is where I'm free to focus. And so we're going to talk about email management. I want to screen share first. I'm going to start with that. So let me just go through that little drill here for sharing my screen. And I'm going to put some slides up. All right. Taming your inbox, 5 steps to productive email management. So let's get started with this. Just first of all, just kind of orient ourselves on how crazy email overload is in the day and age in which we live. I mean, it was crazy when I started my career 35 years ago. Actually, it wasn't crazy because there was no email then. I was one of the first people at my company to buy a PC. The company wouldn't buy a PC for me. I had to buy it for myself. And I was on CompuServe to do email. And so there was no centralized corporate email server. And we just thought email was the niftiest, coolest thing because we could instantly communicate with people that also had email, which at the time was not that very many people. But then it grew within corporations and it got crazy. And today it's pretty much out of control. But here's some stats that might be interesting to you. U.S. workers spend an average of 6.3 hours per day on email. I mean, that's nuts. That's like 80% of your day. Here's another one. 80% of us check email before going into the office. Is that you? I'll bet it is. 30% of us check email before even getting out of bed. I mean, that's crazy. I've caught myself doing it, and I don't do it anymore, but I've caught myself doing that in the past, and it's nuts. More than 80% of us check email on the weekends. It's like there's no escape from email. That's the bad news about smartphones. No matter where you go, you're accessible, and the email can get to you. 55% check email after 11 p.m. Is there any time for you that email's off limits, or are you always on 24/7? 10% even check email at children's school events, weddings, and funerals. I want to tell you something. I think that's an underreported number. I mean, when I go to weddings and to funerals, I can't really think of it being funerals so much, but weddings definitely, and kids' games and all that, it seems like lots of parents, maybe 40, 50% of them have their head down at a device. So it's a big issue. And so what I want to focus on today is 5 steps to manage an out of control inbox. And by the way, if you're just joining us, let me just apologize in advance for my voice. I've had bronchitis for this last week. I'm just now up and around, but my voice is still struggling. So hopefully with use, it'll get better. I've tried to rest it all day and not use it, but hopefully it'll get a little bit better as we go on. So doing the best I can. So here's step number 1. Declare email bankruptcy. Now I want you to look right now at your email inbox, and I want you to see how many unread emails you have. I can tell you at the Free to Focus workshop, the intensive workshop that we did in Nashville, I think it was back in February, we had one guy with over 10,000 unread email messages in his inbox. I mean, that is nuts. And I don't want to shame anybody. I don't want anybody to feel guilty about it. It is what it is. And if that's you, if you've got hundreds or thousands, excuse me, then, just, it is what it is. I mean, it's right to acknowledge it, but I want to give you a way out. And this is not a way that you can use very often, but it's a way to get the sort of, to set the ground level and get a good reboot or a good restart. And that's just to declare email bankruptcy. Now, when I say declare email bankruptcy, I don't mean that you're going to post on your blog. I don't mean you're going to make a big announcement. You're not going to call all your friends and say, whoop, I've declared email bankruptcy. No, all you're going to do is this. You're going to take all those messages that are in your email inbox, and you're going to mark them all as read. Now, if you want to, you can keep the messages that came in for the last 24 hours, but no more than 20. Okay, that's my rule. No more than 20 messages. All the rest of them, you're going to mark as read, and you're going to put them in your email archive, okay? Don't bother about trying to file them. Don't bother about trying to respond to them, because this is what's keeping you hung up. This is why you have an inbox problem, is because you keep procrastinating. And the problem is you keep procrastinating because the problem keeps getting bigger and bigger, right? And you think, oh my gosh, I got to clean this up. But where am I going to find the time? Maybe I'll dedicate the 3rd weekend in May to do this. Or maybe I'll take some time during my vacation, or I'll take this weekend or whatever. And the time never comes because the problem is so big, ugly, and hairy that you just never get to it. And so I want to encourage you to just go ahead and declare email bankruptcy. Now, here's the cool thing. Once you move all those messages into archive, you're still going to have access to them, right? It's really no different, except that it's going to give you huge psychological relief, because suddenly all those messages are not going to be staring at you from the screen, condemning you, shaming you, making you feel like you're a miserable failure of a human being because your inbox is not at 0. And obviously, life is more than inbox 0, but this will give you a psychological advantage and the courage to begin again. So just drag those to your archive, or use the archive button, depending on the email program that you're using. In fact, one of the things I'd like to ask as we're going here, and I've got my chat window open too. Oh, people are giving me their numbers. Great. 328, 331. Fantastic. Yep. Yeah, Mandy, are you saying, can I jump back on? and ask you a question or two now to give your voice a quick breather? Yes, please do.
Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Well, I'm struggling with my voice, but it's okay.
I'm hearing that. It's been fantastic so far. Michael, I thought that I would jump on and chat with you for just a minute here because I know a lot of folks, when we talk about declaring email bankruptcy, they have a lot of guilt around this. They
Yeah.
feel like, man, I'm going to miss something important, or I feel like I'm not doing my duty in terms of responding to these things that people want from me. And so, do you have any advice for those who are maybe feeling really guilty and kind of need permission to go ahead and take the leap and declare email bankruptcy?
Yeah. Well, I guess, first of all, I'm giving you permission. Okay. So if you need permission,
Mhm.
let me be your authority figure. Let me just give you permission. But here's the truth. You're not dealing with those messages now. That's why they're in there. And
That's
that's why
right.
they're bunched up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a system to not only deal with the messages you've got, but to keep from getting in this situation again. And that's the important thing. And that's really the value of even financial bankruptcy. It's a fresh start. It gives you a chance to redo it. Now, a lot of people don't learn the lesson from the past and they end up in the same situation again. And the same thing can happen for email bankruptcy. And I'm going to guarantee you in the next 4 steps, we're going to cover that in detail. But in this first one, just trust me, go ahead and declare email bankruptcy. This is the edge you need to get on top of it.
That's fantastic input, Michael. Now, in terms of the practicality of how to actually go about declaring email bankruptcy, the strategy here is that they're going to go ahead and grab all of those emails, except maybe the most recent ones, maybe the most recent 25 or 30 stuff that's come in just in the last day or two. They're going to grab that whole back archive of emails, whether it's like Brian or Blake, who have got 300 emails stacked up, or maybe it's someone else who has 10,000 emails stacked up. At our recent Free to Focus Ultimate event, we had some folks who had thousands of emails in their
Yep.
inbox. I mean, it's just an impossible load. And so basically, the strategy here, Michael, is that they're going to grab everything except for those most recent 25 or 30, drag them over to an archive folder, get them out of the way. And frankly, if the stuff is important enough, whoever emailed you is going to follow up about it. And
That's
if it's
right.
not, now it's out of the way and you have the sense of freedom that your inbox is actually manageable. Is that the right strategy there?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the rule that I'd given earlier is I said, keep the top 20 if you want.
Okay.
And you can go through and do what we're going to suggest in the next 4 steps, but get all these out of your inbox. Your inbox, where all the new messages come, the goal should be to get that to inbox 0 every day. Okay. And you're not going to do that if you've got thousands of messages in there. They've got to be processed. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next steps.
Absolutely so. Well, Michael, I'm going to go ahead and mute out here again so that we can focus. But again, for all of our attendees who've just recently joined us, if you guys want to share any questions with Michael throughout this session, you can go ahead and share those in the chat window. I'll be filtering through those and popping in here periodically to ask Michael a few of your questions and give his voice a little break. So, Michael, I'll let you keep plowing away the content here. It's been great so far.
Great. By the way, privately, somebody sent me a direct message and said that they had 990,000 messages in their inbox. That boggles my mind. Okay, so that's step 1, declare email bankruptcy. Hope that's clear. Step number 2, empty your inbox every workday. Okay, so empty your inbox every workday. And this is what some people call inbox 0. It's actually possible. And it gives you such a sense of accomplishment and such a sense of control that all the messages are handled, they're responded to. Nobody's waiting on you for anything. No work is being held up because they're waiting on your response. And it's not impossible. You can do this. You may not be able to do it every day. And to be honest, I don't do it every single day, but almost every single day. I just looked at my email inbox before we got on, and I had 3 messages in my inbox that had accumulated during the day. But that's it. So, it's a great goal to shoot for every day. Okay, let me go to step number 3. Batch process your email. This is huge. Stats show that if half of us check our email multiple times a day, 12% check it constantly. In other words, never off email. Just constantly being reminded every time there's a new email message, there's a ding and a reminder that it's, there's a new message that's come in. It interrupts your flow, interrupts your focus, interrupts your concentration. That's not good. So it's better to process it in batches. So bouncing in and out of your email inbox is super inefficient. In fact, it really is an attempt to multitask And if there's one thing you're going to learn in the Free to Focus course, if you haven't learned it already, is multitasking is a myth. It's impossible. What is possible is what's called time slicing, where you give something your attention for just a moment, and then you switch to something else for just a moment. But get this, that switching from one task to another sometimes takes as much as 25 minutes to regain your focus on the next task. And so you're working on something, you check your inbox and you come back and you don't just pick up where you left off. It takes a while to get reoriented and get back in the groove, get back in the flow of what you were doing. So it's much better to process it in a batch. So I would set aside a few times each day when you're going to process your email. And if you must, let your colleagues know what time those are, so they're not expecting instantaneous response. And this is where I think as organizations culturally, we get dysfunctional. We expect people to be always on, always responsive, and it creates this kind of unwieldy standard of responsiveness that nobody can live up to. And it becomes a recipe for being unfocused and not making the progress we need to. We feel like we're busy because we're being responsive, but are we being productive? And I define productivity as are we accomplishing the things that are the most important priorities? Not just busyness, not just filling up the hours with activity, but are we doing the 1, 2, 3 things every day that are really important, that move us in the direction of our goals, that accomplish our most important priorities? So set aside a few blocks of time each day to process email. Now, I'll tell you what I do. I check email in the morning at about 9 o'clock. So first thing when I get into the office, it's part of my workday startup ritual, and you'll learn more about that in Free to Focus. But I'll check email then. Then I'll check it right before I go to lunch, and usually not too much is accumulated by then. And I'll tell you why that's the case in a little bit. And then I'll usually check it right when I get back from lunch before I get back into work. And then I'll check it at the very end of the day. So those 4 times, but I'm not spending more than 30 minutes a day, usually about 20 minutes a day, checking my email. So have designated times and create the expectation on the part of your team or the part of your key clients or somebody else what kind of frequency you do it. Now, some of you may be thinking, but my clients expect instantaneous response, right? And by the way, if you're in customer service, this is a tough thing to do. So I'm not referring to people where you have to be on constantly, where that's really the definition of the job. But for those of you that don't have to be on constantly, and I think you have to go to your clients and you have to explain why it's in their best interest for you to have focused time where you can do deep work on their behalf and really exercise the creativity, the thoughtfulness, the care that really advances their projects and gives them a quality product. So I think if you can be proactive, you can preempt a lot of the objection to that kind of schedule. So that's step number 3. Man, you got any questions that have come up since I started that?
Hey, Michael, I absolutely do. So I think this is a great question. You just spoke to the need of setting expectations with clients that you're not going to be responding all day long. But I
Right.
think one of the biggest issues there can be, how do you set expectations for your boss? If you have a superior within your company who expects immediate responses, that can be a little bit more challenging. So this one came in from J. Blake Arrington, who said, what about dealing with military issues? If emails can't be ignored because of rank, etc., how do you avoid your boss's email demands from derailing your progress?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that it's really any different in the corporate world because there's rank in the corporate world too. We just don't
Mhm.
salute the boss, but other than that, it's pretty much the same. I think this is where, again, you have to have a grown-up, sit-down conversation with the boss. And the key to selling your boss anything is to help him or her get more of what they want, right? So if they want higher quality work, if they want greater productivity, greater output, whatever it is, you've got to understand what it is they're after, and you've got to frame your request in terms of how this is going to help them get what they want. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I hate to say this is crass, but your boss doesn't really care what you want. His or her job is not to make your life more comfortable or more convenient or easier. Their job is to accomplish a mission, and you're part of the solution to that mission. So you've got to frame it in a way that helps them understand how, by checking email a couple times a day, they're going to get more of what they want. They're going to get better work from you. They're going to get higher quality work from you. And that's how I would sell it. And so I would ask for an understanding or expectation. And you may have to negotiate this. Your boss may say, look, I got to have more access to you than that. And so you might have to say, well, what if I checked it at the top of the hour every hour? But that would give me, say, 50 minutes or 55 minutes where I could really do focused work and really try to do the work that I've been hired to do. So there's some negotiation, some play there. But again, frame it in terms of helping the boss get what they want.
That's great advice, Michael. And in my experience, your boss is not only going to respect the fact that you've approached them to talk about that, but they're really going to appreciate that. When you, again, as Michael said, you're not framing it just for your own benefit. Hey, I need to get less emails from you, or I need to get more focused time to work. But when you make it focused on how reducing the amount of email conversation you're dealing with during the day is going to benefit them and help you better serve and add more value to your team, whatever context you're in, whether you're in a corporate context or a military context, your boss is really going to expect the leadership that you're exerting there and the fact that you're raising the conversation about how your whole team can be more productive. And so I think that's tremendous guidance. Now, Michael, we've got more questions coming in. There's a great one from Bob Rosen that I'm actually going to store away for the end. But before we move on from batch processing email, I think that this is a tough area for a lot of us because we're so used to being continually responsive on email all day long. So I know there's a great app that you use that can kind of act as training wheels that can keep those email notifications from bothering us when we're trying to focus in and zero in on a project. Can you tell us a little bit about your favorite app for that?
Yeah, there's an app called Freedom app. And I think you can find that at freedom.2. Is that right,
Yes.
Mandy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Freedom.2.
Freedom.2. And it's an app that you can install on all your devices, whether it's a Windows, Mac, iOS device, I think Android. And what it does is it selectively turns off your access to the internet. And by selectively, I mean this. I'm a writer, so I have to have access to the internet for research. So I just can't, willy-nilly turn off the internet and expect to be productive. But I don't need access to Facebook. I don't need to watch YouTube videos. I don't need Twitter. I don't need email. I don't even need Slack, which is the email replacement that we use internally, which I want to say more about that later. So remind me, Mandy.
Yes, sir.
But it allows you to selectively turn off the parts of the internet that you don't need access to. And when you turn it off, you specify which apps or which parts of the internet you want to turn off. You configure it, in other words. And then you determine the session length. So you can say, okay, I don't want to access these parts of the internet for the next hour. When you turn it on, get this, it turns it on all your devices. What that means is you can't cheat. You can't cheat. So you can't say, okay, I'm going to just check Facebook here, on my phone, because it's turned off on your phone too. The only way to defeat it is to completely reboot your computer. Now, who wants to do that? Because that takes a lot of time too. And it's usually just enough of a friendly reminder that, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be focused here. So it kind of breaks that compulsion that a lot of us have developed over time, where we get that dopamine hit by jumping over to Facebook rather than staying engaged in some difficult task. And so Freedom will break that. So it's a great app.
It really is. And when I find this really helpful, Michael, is when I'm doing creative work. So especially when I'm doing a project like writing and you hit that moment where you're just not sure where to go next and your brain just wants to run away from the problem and flit off to email or Slack. Oh, I'm being productive because I'm doing something else instead of sticking with the problem. That's when it's the most tempting. And so for you guys, if batch processing email is tough for you for that reason, the Freedom app that you can find at freedom.2 is going to be great training wheels to help you learn how to batch process. Well, Michael, again, this has been great so far. I cannot wait to hear step 4. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off and I will see you soon for more questions.
All righty. Okay. Step number 4, simplify your folders. Man, I tell you, I used to have a guy that I worked with. In fact, he was my CFO. He had this complex set of nested folders in email, folders within folders, within folders, within folders. I'm describing some of you right now, right? But here's the problem. It basically promotes procrastination because you've got an email message and maybe a client has written to you and they're talking about 2 different projects. So now I have to make the decision. Am I going to file that in folder or project folder A, or am I going to make a copy of it and put one copy in project folder A and one copy in project folder B, and it just becomes this convoluted thing. Well, with the miracle of modern search engine technology, you can find any email you want in a matter of seconds with a very simplified folder structure. Almost everything for me goes inside of archive. Now, I have some sort of intermediate folders, like I have comments from my blog that go into to one folder, but they don't stay there. When I'm done with them, they go into the archive. I've got receipts; they go into one separate folder. But those are all automated things. I'm not thinking about those. I'm not having to do any of the filing myself. So I suggest one folder to rule them all. Call it archive, call it processed mail, call it all mail. I think Gmail calls it. It doesn't really matter what it is, but put everything in that one place. Then when it comes time to find that message that you're looking for, all you got to do is search. Use your email search function and find the message. And especially if it's a Gmail-based system, Google, if there's one thing they've got squared away is search. All kinds of operators, all kinds of things to help you find your messages quickly. So learn some of those operators and learn some of those techniques for finding your email quickly. But I find that's so much easier, and it completely sucks procrastination out of the mix so that you no longer have to wait or know where to file it. It's one less decision you have to make. Just bam, goes in processed mail or all mail or the archive. Okay? Step 5, use the 5 Ds. Now, people get bogged down in processing email because, and see if this sounds like you, they keep reading the same email message over and over and over again. So instead of reading it and then making a decision and then processing it, and that's really what I'm recommending, is that you read it and then decide. Instead of doing that, they read it and read it and read it and read it. And what you got to realize is that there's only 5 possible decisions. There's only 5 things you can do with an email. And once you have this list down, once you've got it memorized, this is just like, if you're taking karate, these would be like the basic moves. It's like every other move is based on this. So if you learn these so that they become rote, it becomes very easy to very swiftly move through a full inbox and dispatch emails with ease. So I call these the 5 Ds, and let me just go over these for you now. Okay, the first one, shocking, delete it. Yeah, you can actually delete email. So how much email do you get that you don't need to be getting at all? Be ruthless on the delete key. My philosophy is, if it's really important, somebody else somewhere in the world has a copy of it. And as all the email scandals of recent years have shown, that's usually pretty true, right? So be ruthless. Delete those emails that you don't need. So that's like the first step. Second of all, you can deposit it in your archive folder. So this is just for those messages that you want to keep because maybe there's some reference information, maybe it's a receipt, maybe it's some order information, it's a license number, it's something that you need for the future. You're just going to deposit that in your archive folder. If you want to, you can save a copy of it in Evernote, but more and more, I should say less and less I do that. More and more I just go ahead and put it in my archive folder and look it up. In fact, I was installing a piece of software that I had a license to on a new computer the other day, and I just went into my email, did a search, bam, there it was. I had it. So Google remembers everything. So deposit it in your archive folder. Third option is do it. If someone is making a request that you can do in 2 minutes or less, just do it. In other words, don't bother to log it onto your task list. In fact, by doing that, you're going to end up with an overly long task list. So if you can do it in 2 minutes or less, just go ahead and do it and get it out of the way. Clear it out, make room for the more important work. So just do it, just like the Nike commercial says. Number 4, delegate it. Maybe it's a request that needs to be done by somebody, but it doesn't need to be done by you. And so you could forward that to a teammate, somebody that works for you. You can sometimes even delegate up. I've done that with great success in the past. My team is good at that as well. But just forward the email with instructions of what you expect. And I'll show you a way to follow up on this in a minute if you want. But yeah, just delegate it. Give it to somebody else to do. So that's the fourth thing you can do. The fifth thing is defer it. So consciously decide you're going to do the task later. So schedule an appointment with yourself to complete it. So for example, after the first of the year, my accountant sent me the nice, tax package and all the stuff that I needed to collect. But I wasn't going to mess with it the first part of January. So I just put that on my calendar, a reminder on my calendar to look at that the first part of February. So whatever it is, you could schedule an appointment with yourself to deal with that in the future. Why? Because it doesn't need to be handled now. So if you want to, you can create a task. I talk about that in lesson 9 on the Free to Focus course. You'll get to that later, but you can defer it. What you really want to do, again, is read the email once and take one of those 5 actions. You either want to delete it, deposit it, do it, delegate it, or defer it. Those are really the only 5 things you can possibly do. Okay, Mandy, you want to come back on and see if there are any other questions there?
Hey, Michael. Yes, I definitely do. We have got some really fantastic questions coming in. I love this one from Brian Daly asking about strategy number 4 here, the idea of delegating. How do you follow up on delegated emails? Do you have any tips for us for that?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. One is, I'm going to give you a couple different ways you can do it. One is that in your task management system, you can use a category tag called waiting for. And this is a technique I learned from David Allen, Getting Things Done. And so that anything that gets delegated gets a waiting for tag. So in other words, I'm waiting for somebody else to make progress on that task. And so if I want to search for that waiting for, or if I want to look at all the items I'm waiting on, I can just look at that category of tasks and I can see those. You might also, if you're using a paper-based system, you could just create a page called waiting for, write the task down with the person's initials so that you can check up with them. The system I like best, rather than putting waiting for, is to actually put their initials with the task. So if I'm waiting for something from you, Mandy, I would just put MR for Mandy Ravicchio. And then I would know next time I talk to you, I can check on those tasks that I'm waiting for you on. And I will say this, if you have good people, if you have the right people, this really doesn't matter. I mean, I don't follow up on many tasks because I don't have to. I delegate the stuff to good people that are responsible and they just get it done.
That's true. A great team is the best asset that you can have when it comes to delegating. Folks that you don't have to micromanage and don't have to handle.
That's right.
But that tagging strategy is a great strategy to use if you do want to make sure that some important emails don't slip through the cracks. Now, Michael, before we move on from the 5 Ds, did you have something else to add here?
Well, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to try to screen share my email program here in a second.
Oh, great.
In fact, I wonder if I could just do this. Let me go ahead and summarize this.
Sure.
And then let me unshare the slides and reshare just my email inbox.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. I will
Okay, so
give you the floor to do that.
Okay. All right, so let's just summarize. Step number 1, declare email bankruptcy. And please don't be afraid to do this. Please stop promising yourself you're going to get to that unwieldy inbox and get it organized. You're not. You've been telling yourself this for weeks, for months, maybe years. Just declare email bankruptcy and purpose that from this point forward, you're going to practice inbox 0, okay? Step number 2, empty your inbox every workday. You don't have to do this on the weekends. Let the email fill up over the weekend. But every single workday, you're going to get to inbox 0. Step number 3, process or batch process your email. Don't constantly stay on email and turn the sound notifications off. Talk about something that will completely disrupt your focus. And, if you want to be like a flea that's constantly going from this thing to the next, leave email notifications turned on. But for the rest of us, turn it off. Step number 4, simplify your folder system. Again, I recommend one folder to rule them all, just an archive folder of some sort. And then step 5, use the 5 Ds. Okay, so let me unshare this. Mandy, you can get back on if you want. And I'm going to make sure that I don't have any crazy confidential stuff here in my email inbox.
Always an important thing to consider when we're doing a live demo here.
Yep.
And Michael, while you're pulling that up, this has been so helpful today. We are getting such great feedback. Patricia Ann wrote in and said, this has been so helpful. So thank you. This has been a really great session so far.
Great. Let me just, I'm going to see if I can do this. Give me just a second here. First of all, I would like to know in the chat window, what email programs are you guys using? What do you use to manage email? Just real quickly, just tell me the name of the program.
I'm seeing some Microsoft Outlook here, Michael. Mac Mail. Bob Rosen says that he's used a fantastic program for years called Follow Up Then. And I'm seeing some Gmail for personal. Lots of Outlook users here today, Michael.
Yeah, that didn't surprise me. Outlook's very popular, and it's gotten even better over the years. Okay, so you can see my inbox here, right? Here's a couple things that I want to point out. First of all, you'll notice that I have a public email address and I have a private email address. Okay, so I really recommend this. And here's what it is, especially if you have an assistant. So I have two assistants, Susie and Jim, and basically they manage my public email address. So anything that comes into me, with the exception of my close family and a handful of people on my team, not very many, not everybody on my team, handful of people on my team, they can't get to me directly. It goes into my public email address. Then Jim or Susie sift through that public inbox, and they handle everything they possibly can without intervention from me. By the way, do you notice that I'm offline here? You can see these
seeing that, yes.
Exclamation points. So I'm not keeping this online all the time. So they'll go through and they'll find the messages that demand or require my attention. They'll then drag this into this private account. Okay, so it's very easy in Mac Mail to do this. I don't know about Outlook or any of the others, but they drag it into the private account. I just turned this on for demonstration purposes. I don't even have this public account turned on. So the only thing I'm seeing is private. So I'm not distracted by all the messages that are coming into public. I'm only seeing the messages that are in my private account. Does that make sense, Mandy?
Fantastic, Michael. It makes perfect sense. And I think it's such a great strategy that those who have executive assistants or have a team that's helping them can use to have someone else manage their email, but again, still have an account where they're zeroing in on the things they really need to focus on. So I know this 2 email strategy has been a game changer for you.
It really has. And it keeps my life sane because honestly, I only probably get 10 or 12 messages a day, which is probably shocking to most people, especially how large our organization is. But that's all that needs my attention. My assistants do a phenomenal job. Now, this is an important point too, because people say, well, did they respond on my behalf? They do respond on my behalf, but they don't respond as me. So in other words, they're not trying to make people think they're me. That would be dishonest. It lacks integrity. So no. So what they do is they'll respond from my account, but they'll always sign it with their own name. And usually they'll say something like, hey, Bill, hope you don't mind. Michael asked if I could respond on his behalf, and then they'll respond. And nobody ever gets offended by that because they get a prompt response and they get a courteous response. And Susie and Jim, honestly, they control my calendar, so they can usually get a faster decision than they can if these people came directly to me. Now, in terms of confidential information, all confidential information, I even have a third account for ultra confidential information, which is right there, nothing in it right now. Thankfully, I clicked on it before I thought. But that's like my accountant has that information, my tax preparer, really the confidential stuff, so that even Jim and Susie don't see that. That just comes straight to me. So you don't want to get too complex, but the whole goal is to simplify your life. And for me, this really simplifies it. And you can see I have one for comments. I have one for web sales. I just like keeping track of that kind of stuff, but that's how easy it is. And then I've got all mail down here where everything gets filed.
That's fantastic, Michael. What I love most about all of this is this idea that you only have to personally deal with 10 or 12 emails a day. And I mean, that's really such an incredible kind of aspirational place for most of us. I know that most of our users, and you guys back me up on this, jump into the chat window and let me know, but I think most of us are probably processing a lot more email than that. And I think that's what makes these 5 strategies so incredibly powerful. Don't you think, Michael?
Yeah, I do, because there's so much more important stuff that needs to be done outside of email. I'll tell you one of the things that's been a game changer for us too is that we use Slack, which is an email alternative for all internal communication. So we used to be like every other organization. A couple of years ago, we emailed each other for internal communication. And the problem with that is, you'd find out that you needed to rope somebody else into the conversation. And were they going to start at the bottom and read, the whole chain? And it just got to be unwieldy. It was a mess. Everybody hated it. So we tried Slack, total game changer. If you're not using Slack, you absolutely must try it. And I can tell you how we do that if you're interested.
It's fantastic. You guys, Slack is amazing. If you're just using email and you've never tried Slack, you've got to give it a shot. We've got lots of folks popping into the chat window and letting us know they've used Slack before. Adam DeGuay says, we use Slack. It's very handy. And we've got some questions coming in from J. Blake Arrington again here, Michael, asking
Okay.
if you could explain a little bit more about Slack. Could you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, Slack is basically like chat, but it's arranged in channels or rooms or topics. So it enables you to interact with each other either synchronously, in real time, or asynchronously, where somebody leaves a message and you come back at your convenience and respond. You can do it either way. You can upload files to it. It makes it very easy to keep track of conversations because you have the entire message history there. You don't find yourself having to repeat the same things over and over again. So when new people come into your organization, they've got the complete history on that particular topic. And it just makes it, it feels like our whole team's remote, but it feels like we're all in one big room and we can get the answers we need in order to get stuff done.
It's true, Michael. It does feel that way. And one of my favorite things about Slack is that it has all of the functionality of email. So you can organize conversations, yes. You can create these channels, and channels are basically a foldering system that lets you organize conversations based on topic. You can privately message someone on your team. You can privately message multiple people on your team and have a conversation that only 3 of you need to be involved in, or 4 of you. So it's got all that same functionality as email, but it feels like a text message, which for me makes it so much more fun, number one. And number two, it makes it so much more efficient because it cuts out all of the fluff where you're writing an email and you're going, "Hi, Bill. Hope you're having a great day. Wanted to ask you a question about this." Then you write the
Right.
1-sentence question that the email is really about. And then you've got your whole closeout line and your signature. And it's just all this fluff when really you just needed to say 1 sentence to Bill. Well, Slack feels a little bit like a text message. You get right down to what you need to talk about. And so it's faster, it's more fun, and it's way more efficient. Don't you think so, Michael?
Yes. And plus, let's not forget, Mandy, it also has great emoji.
It does, which I mean is really the most important thing, if we're being honest.
But it does
so
make
essential.
it fun. It makes communication fun. Kind of returns the fun to it.
Yes, it certainly does.
I do see a question
from Brian Daly here.
Yeah, he said you check Slack just a few times a day, like email. Yes, I tend to go in there when I have a need, like when I have a need for something from my team, and I'll post. But in terms of just seeing if there are any messages from me, I do that at the same time that I do my email check.
That's fantastic, Michael. Well, Michael, I can't believe it, but our time is just about gone. And guys, today our major purpose was for Michael to walk you through these 3 strategies that he uses to quickly process email so that you can use them to escape the overloaded email inbox and really focus in. But we also really wanted this session to be about personal coaching for you guys. Again, you're among the first 50 people who enrolled in Free to Focus, which is huge for us, and we're so appreciative of it. And so we wanted to give you a chance to get some customized coaching from Michael. So we're going to shift into a little time of Q&A for the last 15 minutes here. So if you guys have any questions that you haven't shared with us so far, go ahead and head down into that chat window. We're going to be powering through as many as we can in these next 15 minutes here. So Michael, are you ready to dive into a few questions?
Yeah, please.
Fantastic. Well, I love this one that came in from Bob Rosen. Bob said, it sounded earlier like Michael was going to make a suggestion about the email program that he recommends. Would you ask him what he uses? So I know that you just said that you use Apple Mail. Do you have any recommendations about programs that you either recommend or wouldn't recommend?
Um, I really think this is one of those things where it depends on your needs. I'm really tools agnostic. I think the most important email program that you could use is the one that you will use and that you understand. And I've tried a lot of different ones. I try almost everything that comes out for a while, but the one that I keep coming back to over and over again is Mac Mail because I'm able to customize it. In fact, I'm going to screen share again. I meant to show this to you earlier. Hello, screen sharing.
Screen sharing is so helpful. It's
And
great
you
to
may
have
not
a
even know about
visual, not
this.
just the audio.
You may not even know about this, Mandy, but there's
I
a
might not.
plugin for Mac Mail. Do you use Mac Mail?
I do.
Okay. So there's a thing called Mail Butler. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it. I don't know much about it.
Okay. So
I'm
this
on
is
the
pretty
edge of
cool.
my seat here, right along with everybody else.
Okay. So it adds a bunch of functionality to Mac Mail. So for example, you can connect it to Evernote or Google Drive or Todoist or a bunch of other, excuse me, applications. You can tell it when to deliver certain things. You can get this balance. So I tell it, I don't want to get any emails. I want it basically to go offline on its own between these hours on these
Wow.
days. Okay. If I didn't want to get any email on the weekends, I don't typically check email on the weekends, but I can just turn that off. And so let me show you what that looks like when it's turned off. Let me just think, what's today? Tuesday?
It is.
Well, actually, I'm offline already, so it's not going to help. But it'll actually it'll put them on pause, and there's a little pause symbol that goes to the side of it. You can do all kinds of signatures, shortcuts, but it has a lot of functionality that's really, really cool. So that's one of the reasons that I like it.
That's fantastic. I love that tool recommendation there, Michael. Now, another question related to some of your favorite email tools. I know that some of us who are on the line here have maybe we've subscribed to things over the years, and gradually that stuff just accumulates. And before you know it, you're getting dozens and maybe even hundreds of emails that really are junk mail that you don't need to see anymore. So I know you have a favorite tool to help escape all of that unnecessary junk mail. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I use an application called Unroll.me. Unroll.me, which basically unsubscribes you from anything you want. It keeps track of all your email subscriptions, and you can either selectively unsubscribe from them. You can get them rolled into a digest so that you don't see the individual messages, but you see a digest of all the messages. Or you can just en masse decide, you know what, I've had it. I want to unsubscribe from everything. And it handles all the details behind the scenes. Very, very cool program.
That is very cool. All right, great question that's coming in from Lauren about converting emails to PDFs. And so Lauren said, my biggest email hurdle is that I have a contract agreement with a global client that says I must save all correspondence on each job for up to 3 years. One job could have hundreds of emails. So is there a program that can convert several emails into PDFs at one time? In an ideal world, I would be able to move all of those emails into PDFs and onto a portable hard drive.
You know, I don't know of one, but that's where I would go to Google and do a search because there probably is. My guess is that there's probably, depends if you're on a Mac or not, but there may be Apple script or something that you could write to do that. But I don't know of anything off the top of my head.
Okay, that's a great suggestion there, Michael. Now, I've seen more questions coming in about Slack. It seems like we've got a lot of questions, which I find really encouraging because we are Slack enthusiasts around here. We
Yes,
love
we
it.
are.
I think one of the reasons that Slack is so fun, Michael, wasn't it originally created as the chat feature in a gaming app?
Yeah, it was basically the guys that created it had created a gaming app that didn't work. And they created this tool, Slack, to communicate internally. And the gaming company didn't survive, but Slack did. And now it's valued at multi-billions of dollars.
I mean, it's really fantastic. And it does have a little bit of a fun, gamified kind of feel, right down to the
It does.
colors in it. It's just really vibrant and engaging. We love using it. Now, Michael, one of our users on the line asked, can you use Slack from your iPhone and your computer? Is it supported on multiple devices?
Yes, it's supported on every device. I've got it on a Windows machine that I have up in my studio. I've got it on iPads, iPhones, Macs. I don't have an Android device, but they have an Android version too.
Fantastic. All right, Michael, another great question from J. Blake Arrington asking about sorting out work and personal email. And so he says, I use Nosby and Evernote, but struggle with the coordination with Outlook for work. So is it possible to have two separate email lives, to have a business side that's in Outlook and then have a personal side someplace else?
Yeah, it is. It's harder to do that, but absolutely. I would just have an email account. You could still run it through Outlook, or you could run it through some other system, but I would just segregate it and decide, what's personal and what's business. You can totally do that.
That's fantastic, Michael. All right. So another kind of secret strategy of yours that I know that has saved you tons and tons of time that not a lot of people practice has to do with email signatures. Now, when most of us think about an email signature, we think about the name and contact info that appear at the end of our email. That's how we would define a signature. But you use those in some really unique ways in order to save time. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So what I do is any request that I get more than once, I think that's a candidate for a templated response. Okay. So inside the email domination bonus, which many of these people will have access to, there's the email templates, and you'll see these. So if you're getting requests for the same thing over and over again, instead of reinventing the wheel every time, come up with a thoughtful, gracious response, helpful response to that, and then save it as an email signature. So that, because the truth is, a signature doesn't just have to be a signature. It can be any block of text. You could use something else like Text Expander or some other text expansion software to do it. Typinator is another one. But right inside your email software, you can do that. So you take a template and you reply with that template, which is the thoughtful, careful, helpful response that you've come up with previously. Now, what I've done is, since I don't really answer those anymore, I don't really use them much anymore because I'm dealing with 10 or 12 messages a day, but I offloaded those to my team. And so now, I don't know, they've got probably over 100 of them that they use in customer service, and also Jim and Susie use to respond to common requests. So all you got to do is pull down on the email signature to use that. And again, I give a demonstration inside that the email domination bonus. Does everybody have access to that or not? Do you know?
I believe that all of our VIP and Ultimate users who are with us today will have access to that email domination bonus.
Okay.
And so if you are a VIP or Ultimate user, you can head on over to the Free to Focus course site at freetofocus.com. Just go to the bonuses section and you'll see that email domination bonus. It's going to be so fantastically helpful. I know you guys are going to enjoy that. It's a really, really great one.
Terrific.
Now, Michael, I can't believe it, but our time is already just about gone. This training has flown by so fast. And so I want to say thank you to all of you guys who have joined us for this session. You guys have been a great audience. We've got just a few more minutes before we're going to wrap it up here. And Michael, I want to talk a little bit about some common mistakes that people make with emails. But if you guys have any last questions for Michael, I want to encourage you to go ahead and share those in the chat window, and we will gladly try to sneak in one or two more before we close here. So again, if you've got a last question for Michael about email management or about productivity in general, head on over to the chat window and let us know what your question is. So Michael, what would you say are some of the most common mistakes that people make with email that make it really cumbersome and make it a big drain on their time? And how can we resolve some of those?
Well, I think a lot of them we've talked about sort of indirectly, but probably the biggest one is just reading and rereading the same message over and over again without taking any action. That's just wasted effort. You end up doubling, tripling your workload because you're not taking action. So you've got to force yourself to read it once and decide. Read it once and decide. And again, there's only those 5 actions you can take. So read it once and decide, and then move on. I think another one is adding a task to their task list when in fact they could just do it and get it out of the way. So somebody makes a request, they ask you to do something. If you can do it in 2 minutes or less, just go ahead and do that. I think another one too is constantly checking your email, having your email notifications on. You can turn those off. There should not be any sound when an email message comes in. If it's really super urgent, somebody can text you or somebody can call you, but don't reward people on email by keeping that on and checking constantly. Because here's what happens is how you behave sets people's expectations. So if people can send you an email and you respond instantly and you pride yourself in that, then that's what they're going to expect. And if for some reason you can't respond instantly, they're going to think something's off. You're going to disappoint them. So I think just as a matter of principle, respond at set times and basically train people what they can expect from you. And for most people, let's be honest, unless you're working as an ER doc or something, people don't need to hear from you immediately. They got things to do. They're probably just firing it to you because they thought of it and they want to get an answer at some point, but it doesn't have to be now. And if it does, they can find another way to communicate to you.
That's so true. And Michael, I think that as we kind of bring this to a close, one of the most important things that we can talk about here is why it's important. And so I think when it comes down to managing your email more effectively, it's obviously important because a lot of us are drowning in email and you need your time back.
Right.
But something that you've mentioned before, Michael, that I think is so powerful here is that email tends to be a non-revenue producing activity. And so even if we're one of those folks who really prides ourselves on giving those instantaneous responses, the reality of the matter is that those instantaneous responses, as much as they might feel nice to your clients, probably aren't driving up the bottom line. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it's really true. And when your clients hire you, certainly they expect a certain level of responsiveness. I'm not taking anything away from that. But you're probably not going to get extra credit for being super responsive, especially if it's to the detriment of delivering a quality product. They're hiring you to deliver a specific outcome, a specific result. And to stay focused on that result takes your best, most focused time. And that means you can't be constantly distracted by an inbox that's continually going off. And so nobody does their best work then. And that's why we've got to quarantine it and do it in batches and stay focused, get it done so that we can get to the deeper, more important work. And that's really what the whole course, Free to Focus, is about, because email, if it's not managed, becomes a primary source of distraction.
Fantastic. Well, Michael, again, this has been such a helpful session. We have been getting great feedback there in the chat window. So I just want to thank you for your time today. We really appreciate everything that you've shared with us.
Thanks for hosting this and jumping in at the last minute.
Oh, of course. It's been my pleasure. And this has been a fantastic crowd. It's been a lot of fun. And so, Michael, as we officially bring this session to a close, do you have any final thoughts to share with us for those who are maybe buried in email and aren't sure exactly how or if it's worthwhile to implement these strategies? What would you say to us?
I would just say that this isn't rocket science. It's not that difficult. And probably the reason you feel overwhelmed is because you haven't declared email bankruptcy yet. If you can get that behind you, I think it'll open up the future and everything becomes possible. And then you just got to keep up with it. And it's just like a lot of things in life, like flossing your teeth or working out at the gym. It takes a little bit of time every day, but it doesn't have to be your day. It doesn't have to rule your life. You can put it back into perspective so you can do the better things, the things that really bring meaning to your work, that actually add value to your clients and to your business.
That's such great input, Michael. Well, thank you again for sharing with us today, Michael. It's been so
You
helpful.
bet.
And we also want to thank all of you guys who've joined us live. Again, this was an exclusive opportunity. It was only available to the first 50 people who joined us for Free to Focus during our spring enrollment. And so we just want to thank you guys, first of all, for joining the course. And second of all, for joining the course so quickly and being with us for this special bonus today. We know that you guys are busy. Frankly, you wouldn't have bought a productivity course to help you save time if you weren't busy. And so we don't take it lightly that you've chosen to spend some time with us today. We really hope that this has been helpful to you, that it's given you some practical strategies that you can use to overcome that overloaded inbox that's slowing you down and distracting you. And frankly, that's making you end your workday feeling like you haven't won. I think that's one of the best benefits of the strategies that Michael has outlined here today, is being able to close out your workday feeling like you won the game, like you've got nothing left in that inbox. You dealt with all the things that were most important. And so if you're leaving every day feeling like, man, I could spend another hour answering emails, these strategies from Michael will really help you escape that and help you finish the workday feeling accomplished. And so I want to, before we close, challenge you guys to take some immediate action on what you've learned today. If you want to jump in the chat window, let us know which of these steps you're going to be taking action on first, whether your next step is to declare email bankruptcy or to start batch processing your email or maybe start using Michael's 5Ds, we would love to hear from you. Which of these steps are you going to be taking next to help escape your email inbox? We've got lots of folks jumping in here, Michael, and saying that this session has been golden advice that has been well worth their time. Guys, we love that feedback from you. And so, again, whichever step is your next step today, we just want to encourage you to get started. Like Michael said, it's not rocket science, and we know this is going to be really helpful. Now, if you have any further questions about how to overcome your email issues, we want to encourage you, if you're a VIP or Ultimate user, to take those over to our VIP Facebook group. It's going to be a great source of conversation throughout the year about how to make sure your email inbox stays in check. And we're going to be really excited to continue the conversation with each of you there. So, one more time, thanks for being with us today, guys. And Michael, thank you for all of your insight. It has been such a help.
Thanks, Mandy.
All right. Hope everyone has a fantastic day, and we will see you guys within the course.